Back here on a Saturday. I wanted to record a little bit more of what I was doing last night. Kind of tough because Ezekiel had his own work to do. So I tried to record what I could, but today's a totally quiet day, so I can go into a little bit more depth on what I did do. This last week, Ezekiel welded up a harness bar, which I'll show you guys in a bit. And he also marked the crotch hole. Yes, that's right. The crotch hole on the seat was positioned relative to my chassis with me sitting in it. For me, in these seats, I've got this thing fully reclined back, or not reclined, but slid back. So we just marked, with me sitting in the car, how far it is down vertically. And then the harness that I'm using, which I actually got from Ezekiel as well, it's a 6-point Racequip. And so there's gonna be 2 anti-submarine or crotch belts that I need to mount some provisions for the mounting loops. Underneath the seat, I mean, you'd have 2 of these guys sticking up so that we can latch on the anti-submarine belt. And they're supposed to be about 2 inches back from where the crotch hole would be, which would be about here. You need to have space for 2 of them, so I've got 2 marked here. It's basically, I don't think he plans to track much anymore, and those harnesses do expire, so he gave them to me just so I can get some use out of it as I'm kind of getting this car more and more set up with safety equipment. But anyways, I don't have the original mounting hardware. Is gonna be a thick washer that gets mounted underneath the hoop. And the reason why we have this is to make sure that when the hoop's inserted, if you are involved in some kind of accident, that it's not gonna rip through the relatively thin floorboard metal, which on a Corolla especially is very, very thin. You can kind of even see, where it drilled through. You can kind of see how thin that metal is. So naturally, I don't have that washer. I have it on order from Summit. So I drew up this quick disc on 3D printed software just so I can kind of see where it's going to fit. And the positioning on this is not ideal based on where I'm sitting in the car, because ideally actually this other hole would have been right about here. But you got a frame rail going through here. Like, I could have used a longer bolt, but I was worried that having a longer bolt would allow there to be more leverage in, if I am involved in an accident. So I wanted to try to keep it basically the eyelet as close to the washer as I could, just to reduce the amount of force that's on there. So again, I'm just trying to make this like as safe as I possibly can, because the speeds that this car is starting to hit are just like really high. So I'm just trying to take all the precautions that are necessary. One more cool thing that we're working on is pretty much every 86 and other car that's come through Ezekiel's shop that has a one-piece drive shaft, he's been either buying or like fabricating these drive shaft safety hoops. We tested one and that's looking pretty good, so hopefully we'll have a final product on here pretty soon. So we're getting closer and closer to having the oil cooler fully fitted up. You can see the grommets that I made the last time I was working here, basically last week. We've also got some of these Racetronics billet aluminum couplers, which allow you to kind of connect and tidy up the hoses running next to each other. So we got one here and one here, and this really helps to keep the hoses in place so they're not vibrating around. We confirmed that we're not rubbing anything up here, and the fitment's good. And we're doing the corner balancing, and of course, since my frame fork was literally twisted by a whole lot before, now that's been straightened out, the corner weights were completely off and the ride height was off. So I was kind of messing around last night adjusting the heights of the individual corners so I could get it closer to 50-50 with me in the car. I do have it pretty close now. I've just got a little bit more adjusting to do. I need to get all that figured out and settled before I align it, because once you change the ride height, all the alignment goes out the window. So there's just a lot of things like that you don't necessarily think about, but it really adds up. This is a custom MRP lower control arm and a Whiteline sway bar. But I made some Heim end joints here to connect it, so there's no play there. This does need to be disconnected when you're getting the corner weights done, so I need to go through and hook that up. Also, I found that the way the shop had put it back together, because I'm assuming when they cut the part of the car off, this whole thing was taken off. Yeah, so just the way that these was bolted back together was not quite right, so I'm gonna have to go in there and change the spacing and positioning of like some of the nuts and washers. Yeah, like here's a bracket that used to be associated with how my old oil cooler was mounted, but that's not needed anymore since then we came out with our own mounting kit. So we need to go through that as well. But yeah, it's coming together. Definitely making progress. I'll check back soon. Can you even imagine doing this to your car if you had a nice one? Just going through and punching a hole through your floorboard. I'm very glad that I do have a car that basically started from nothing. I don't feel as guilty just going through and just modifying this thing as I want to, develop race parts and to go racing. So I'm quite fortunate to have a piece of junk like this that, I can really go to town with and just not feel guilty. So I saw something that cracked me up a bit. I used to stand back at this car on the rack, and I would notice that with a car at the race ride height with matched corner scale outputs, so basically the car was like leveled out, this control arm would be significantly angled more downwards than this one. And as I stand back now, So that's before with the tweaked frame. As they stand back now, they're actually a lot more, I mean, they're pretty even. The only reason why they're not is probably just accounting for my driver's, weight. I weigh 215 pounds currently. And yeah, I got accommodated for that on one corner when I sit in the car. It's just small things like that are just, really make it seem worth all the time and effort that we've put in, as a team, and with Mike's help at the body shop, just going through and straightening this car out. Cause man, it's incredible. It's like this stuff actually lines up like it should. And just, I never would have thought that I would be in that spot with this car 10 years ago. So pretty cool. Eyelets underneath the car. I just have a temporary nut holding them. This is where the original seatbelt strap went. This is also where the original, and so people online talk about how there's a kind of a standardized thread bolt pitch for seatbelts, at least in the US. And then the Japanese equivalent is an M11 by 1.25 apparently. And I think these are like 7/16-20. And supposedly it's interchangeable. And sure enough, they did thread in. However, I can tell that the threads are, like, it works, but it's a little bit loose. Well, that, once I have this tightened up, this won't move. And so, like, you wouldn't be able to tell from the outside. But again, since this is a safety issue, I'm gonna look in to see if I can actually find an eyelet for at least this one, maybe overseas, and get that on order in the correct thread pitch. But I'll just use this for now for test fitting. And so I plan to do that on at least this one, if possible. This one I'm okay using as long as I can fit a metric nut of the right size on the, a standard nut on the back side of this, so that it's not relying on the threads, but it's also got a nut backing it up just to make sure it doesn't rip through. And then here, this doesn't matter at all because this is gonna be using the American standard nuts underneath the washer. So basically this is the only one that I'm a little bit concerned about. So I'll be looking into that. The next part will be to put the seat in hook up the harnesses and just see how they're gonna run, then place the seat in, adjust it so that the cross strap is centered, and hopefully see if this works. So another thing we can take a look at is, this is a chromoly tube that Ezekiel helped me order up. He also welded on these OMP FIA rated tangs to hold the roll bar mount here. And this is just some miscellaneous hardware they have just holding the bar in place for test fitting. I need to get the correct hardware from Ezekiel. I'm not sure where he put it in the shop. But anyways, yeah, this is a new addition. This was just some auto power roll bar that I bought off of Colton Sinclair in San Luis Obispo. It was just a friend of mine that happened to have a roll bar for a Corolla, but it was really just like a street performance bar. It had no diagonals, it had no harness mount, so we wanted to get the harness mount on here. Later on we may add some diagonals, but this car will probably get a full cage as I continue to do competitive like track days, but this will be good enough for our time trial around Thanksgiving time frame. So what's the deal with all this crap? Yeah, this is just the leftover, sound deadening material. And yes, this bothers me too. Actually, a lot of stuff about the car bothers me cosmetically, but 100% I need to focus on the safety and mechanical issues with the car first. But the good news is once that's all done, pretty much just gonna be doing cosmetic stuff only, and that might actually be the most rewarding part. So kind of just got to slog through this, get the car back together. So I've got the 2-point crotch trap coming through here, and I've also got this the other side of the lap belt mounted up. And I'm a pretty tall guy, so the seat is pretty much just backed up against this bar. We measured it before Ezekiel welded these hangs in place. And I mean, even if I needed more space, there's not much we can do because this bar is connected directly to this roll bar. So let's say that this bar doesn't allow me to come back enough to drive the car. These are little things that can always pop up, which is the reason why when someone asks me like, hey, how are you looking for the track day? Are you gonna make it? I can't commit to that. Look at all these things. Look at all these things that we're changing, dude. I don't know. I'm just happy that this deadline is giving me an excuse to prioritize doing this kind of work on the car, which needed to be done at some point. But just really helps me to carve time out of my really busy life to force myself to focus on it. So I've been at this for about an hour and a half now. Just a lot of removing the seat, adjusting the links of these strap locks on basically every set, and then setting these to a usable length, then going back and adjusting these links, then seeing if it'll strap in on the sides, and then wait, is the crotch too tight now or not? Going in, taking the seat out, adjusting that, a lot of back and forth. But the good news is that Ezekiel pretty much nailed it on the placement of this bar. It's just barely grazing the back of the seat. I put some electrical tape on the back of the seat for now just to keep the paint from getting ridiculously scratched up. I might find a better long-term solution for that. And the seating position is where it needs to be. So I'm able to reach the pedals. I'm able to grab the steering wheel just fine. Feels pretty good. It's definitely gonna be harder to get in and out of this car every time I'm strapping in for a session. And the other thing that sucks about harnesses is if you're gonna use them on the passenger side as well, a lot of times people that want to ride in the car aren't that familiar with harnesses because they may not own a race car themselves. And there's a lot of, you definitely need to budget a little bit more time for passenger hopping in the car, because there's gonna be a lot of explaining about, you know, like, oh wait, I can't reach the strap, like, okay, gotta get out, and like, you know, push it to the side of the seat before you hop in so you can grab the latch. So I'm just planning on that. So I will probably let my passengers know to give themselves at least 5 minutes so I can at least help them strap in if they can't figure it out themselves. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish bolting things up and getting the links set up. And then I'll probably start looking at the passenger side to see where we need to start drilling to install the harness over there too. But overall success so far, just gotta keep grinding. I'm getting ready to drill the passenger side holes for the anti-submarine belts on the 6-point harness. So we've marked here. This is directly dropping down from the crotch hole on the seat. They want you to mount the eyelets about 2 inches back from that and 4 to 6 inches apart. Ezekiel found that this is a good place where a passenger might be, you know, resting on the seat. Some people might be a little bit more forward. Some people might be further back, but usually on a race day I can just kind of pick where I want the seat. And honestly, I'll probably put as far back as I can for weight distribution, try to get more weight on the back tires. So now the challenge is to find out where I want to mark it, that, or where I want to drill the hole, where it'll allow me to make space for the large washers on the other side, and also allows me to meet this criteria at 4 to 6 inches apart and about 2 inches back from the hole. Generally where I want it, I'm gonna just punch it just to make a mark, and then on the other side I'll find that spot and I'll drill through. Or I might just go underneath and see approximately where I want it and then fit the washer and drill through. I haven't quite decided yet. Now let's take a look on the underside of the car and see what we have going on down there. The loud one is the one we want. Lets me know we're at the top. Looking from underneath, it's kind of hard to see where that spot was, but I'll probably get back on the ladder so I can see both inside and underneath the car at the same time. I wouldn't be able to do this at all if Summit Racing didn't say how wide the washer is that they're sending. I'm basing everything off of the size that the washer is going to be once that arrives in the mail. I'm just going to want to make sure that I set this in a place where it looks like it's got a firm footing, if you will. So I don't want to crush the washer too much. So I'm gonna try to find as flat a surface as I can. And then we want to find a place 4 to 6 inches aside from that where the washer will also fit in satisfactorily. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take a look and see where I end up for that. I've made a small mark on the side of the car. This is directly dead underneath where the crotch hole is on the seat. And then I came back and this mark is about 2 inches behind that. So all I need to do is just find a place 4 to 6 inches apart across this point and go and drill. I did grab a smaller drill bit, which will help to drill a pilot hole. This makes it a lot easier when you're drilling a large hole into a piece of metal or wood or whatever it is, because then you're not fighting the drill bit wandering around as you would with a much larger piece. Much larger drill bit. So we'll start with the pilot hole and then we'll move on to the larger drill bit and finish off the hole. Okay, done with the pilot holes. There's one, there's the other one. But there's space for the washer and it looks to be in a secure place. So now, for your entertainment, I'm gonna finish drilling these holes with one hand. Here we go. Wish me luck. Shit. Oh God. We'll finish this up when it's done with 2 hands. Whoops. 2 holes. It really is a lot easier after the first hole you drill. Once you get used to that concept, you can pretty much just keep drilling all over throughout the car. I mean, it saves weight, right? Might as well. So now I'm gonna fit the hardware from the top and mock up where the bolts go so we can fit the harnesses and put the seat in place. I'm gonna estimate it's gonna take me another couple hours to get that right because there's so much back and forth. So might as well get started on that now. Pretty much landed right on the floor. A little bit over 6 inches apart. Here is the center. This is where I end up dropping in the eyelets and drilling the holes. It's a little bit off center, as you can tell, and it's also a bit that way on the driver's side as well. But as you also saw, there's not really great topography of the chassis down here. Man, that's a word from my geography class or geology class, can't remember. The shape of the underbody is not great. There is a frame rail that's going down here. I'd rather have it be offset a little bit and be able to secure next to where there's kind of more solid frame rail type situation on the chassis, just to kind of give it some extra strength. The main purpose of the strap is to keep the passenger or whoever is experiencing the crash from sliding forward, and also from keeping the lap belts from lifting up and crushing your internal organs. I guess there's been plenty of people that have died in an accident with a 4-point harness, mainly because they slipped under, and it's not like they flew through the windshield or something. I mean, maybe some did, but the reason why that was really bad was because some people would slip underneath and then all the load would be pushing on the internal organs instead of on the pelvic bone. So the main thing is to be able to keep this strap down in place and to keep the the occupant from getting a situation where they're sliding underneath the harness. So I think it's really important to make sure that there's a very secure point that you can pull up and push and pull a lot of load onto the sheet metal. So I'm pretty happy where this ended up. So I think the next steps will be to start laying out the harnesses and fit it and see how it fits up with the seat.